Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahasham, Rakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video. And in this video, I'll be profiling a small clip from Yoram, Yah servant of Yahawashai's Instagram page. And as the title of it says, what they found when they studied Noah's remains. And as we'll see in this clip, they found a grave site that they believe was, the remains of Noah, his wife, and, those 8 people, Noah's sons and their wives that survived the flood. And when they look at the bones, they see that the bones are larger than, the bones of people today. And that is because people in the past were larger than they are now. It's just that through these successive ages, people, plants, vegetation, everything on this planet has grown smaller and weaker. Which, before we get that clip, let's go into a few precepts. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 14, verse 10. For the world has lost his youth, and the times begin to wax old. Point blank period. Over the thousands of years of the earth's existence, it has gotten successively weaker and lost its youth through the generations. Same for the people, the animals, and the vegetation on it. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 14, verse 17. For look how much the world shall be weaker through age, so much the more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein. And we can see that evils have increased through the successive ages as well. And we're at the height of evil, at the height of wickedness right now in these last days under the rulership of the biblical Edomite, or the so-called white man, the most wicked nation of people on the face of the earth. The wicked whom the earth has been given into the hands of in Job chapter 9, verse 24, and the border of wickedness in Malachi 1, verse 4. And if you can receive it, Esau was Cain in the reincarnation. And what was one of the curses besides leprosy, the mark of Cain that Cain was plagued with for killing his brother Abel? It said he would be a vagabond and that the earth wouldn't yield up its strength unto him. So under Esau, Edom's rulership, the earth is especially grown weak and feeble, languished, as it says in Isaiah chapter 24, which, what does it say? The earth is, languished and grown weak because of the haughty or proud people. And what? Because they've transgressed the laws, broken the everlasting covenants and ordinances. Esau, Edom does everything clean contrary to the laws, statutes, and commandments of the scriptures. So the planet is suffering for it. Hey, Proverbs 29, verse 2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And we can especially see it with this food out here. You have to take supplements to get the amount of nutrients that your body needs, because the fruits and the vegetables and the meats don't have that same nutrients in it due to what this factory corporate farming and Esau Edom just continuing to grape the land and strip it of its mineral riches instead of giving the land its land Sabbaths. And also, when you read in the scriptures, it states that a cluster of grapes, that cluster of grapes you get at the store that you can hold in one hand, used to be so large in the past that it would take 2 men to carry that cluster, on a pole on their shoulders. Grapes the size of basketballs. But I digress. But before we get to that clip, this is 2nd Esdras chapter 5. I'm going to start at verse 50. And I asked and said, seeing thou hast now given me the way, I will proceed to speak before thee for our mother, of whom thou hast told me that she is young, draweth now nigh unto age. He answered me and said, ask a woman that beareth children, and she shall tell thee. say unto her, wherefore are unto they whom thou hast now brought forth, like those that were before, but less of stature, and the earth growing weak, losing its youth, because it's waxing older. And she shall answer thee, they that be born in the strength of youth are of one fashion, and they that are born in the time of age, when the womb faileth, are otherwise. And we see that with women today. A woman that has a child in her teens and, her early and mid 20s, she has a child that's, strong and healthy. But say a woman that has a child really going into her 30s, mid 30s, 40s, God forbid, 50s, that child is subject to being born with birth defects and just being weaker. But again, they that be born in the strength of youth are of one fashion, and they that are born in the time of age, when the womb faileth, otherwise. Verse 54, consider thou therefore also how that ye are less of stature than those that were before you. So the angel was telling Esdras that, the thousands of years that he was alive, even then, he was of less stature and weaker than those that were born before him. So how much more us, thousands of years after the prophet Esdras was on the scene? Verse 55, and so are they that come after you, less than ye. Straight to the point. As the creature which now begin to be old and have passed over the strength of youth. Now let's get back to this clip and see how we are of less of stature than those that were before us. Those that are born in the strength of youth are stronger than those that are born, and when the womb faileth. And I got to give a shout out to the brother Kalaya for posting this clip in our chat. But this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
This is a very interesting find. About a mile or two from Noah's Ark, there are the ancient ruins of what they know to be Noah's ancient home. And the reason they know this is because there's a marker out.
Noah's, Salakia, quick correction, Noah's ancient home, not a grave site. But I mean, you find remains anywhere and be considered a grave site.
Of these ruins, it's a giant stone with an inscription of a rainbow. Underneath the rainbow is a ship with animals coming off of it, and then there are 8 carved crosses representing 8 people that came off of the ark. And this was taken from a site that was a dug-up grave at those ancient ruins of Noah's home.
And those are the finger bones.
That is one single finger, and this is a regular-sized woman's hand next to the finger, so that gives you
Hey, ye are of less stature than those that were before
an
you.
idea of how large that person's hand had to be.
Was this Mrs. Noah's finger?
It is believed that this was the grave of Mrs. Noah, and
Okay.
that is Mrs. Noah's finger.
And her name would have been Joan of Arc.
Right.
Yeah, okay. What is this bone here now? This is a thumb bone?
This is a thumb bone. Now, this is not connected to the Noah's Ark location. This was taken from another place in the
A thumb bone. Look at the size of
Middle
that.
East, but that's an example. That's a real bone of how large somebody's thumb was, and you can see it in comparison next to Mary's thumb. It's a lot larger. This toe bone has been examined by multiple actual scientists. None of them are willing to come out and say publicly that this is a toe bone because of backlash from the community. But every one of them said undeniably 100% this is a human toe bone.
But see, the guy would have to be 15 feet tall to have a toe.
He would. Yeah, and that's sitting in the palm of my hand. I have a pretty big hand, as you.
And remember, the statement of that height. He would have had to be 15 feet tall. That'll come into play later.
That's in the palm of it. So that person would have to be easily 12 to 14 feet tall. And not only would their bones have to be longer, but they would have to be wider to sustain that much weight.
Sure, but it was a different world back then.
Which would have been easy to sustain, because why? The earth was in its youth. These fruits and vegetables and vegetation had the nutrients to sustain, bone structure and muscle structure of that size back then.
We know there were giant reptiles. We find the bones all over dinosaurs. They find fossil cockroaches 2 feet long. They find fossil dragonflies, 2-foot wingspan. Fossil grasshoppers 2 feet long. Why can they admit there was giant everything else and can't admit there were giant humans?
It would prove the scripture is a truth.
Straight to the point, it would prove the scriptures are the truth, which they are the truth. But but the earth being given into the hands of the wicked, Esau Edom does everything clean contrary to against the scriptures to try to disprove the scriptures and push his theory in quotes of evolution, the Big Bang theory, which goes back to Babylonian mythology, and just show himself as the Most High to try to sit in the seat of the Most High, as it says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. But now let's get back into these scriptures to show examples of people that were of large stature back in those days. This is where do I want to go? This is a head buster right here. This is 2 Samuel chapter 12. I'm going to read verses 26 to 30. And this is dealing during the times of King David when they were going to war against the Ammonites. And the Ammonites are known as the so-called Japanese today. And Joab fought against Rabbah of the children of Ammon and took the royal city. And Joab sent messengers to David and said, I have fought against Rabbah and have taken the city of waters. Now therefore gather the rest of the people together and encamp against the city and take it, lest I take it, the city, and it be called after my name. Verse 29, and David gathered all the people together and went to Rabbah and fought against it and took it. And he took their king's crown from off his head, something a man was clearly wearing on his head, the weight whereof was a talent of gold with the precious stones, and it was set on David's head, and he brought forth the spoil of the city in great abundance. Now let's see what the talent of a weight of gold was back then. And this is on learnreligions.com. How heavy was a talent? The talent was the heaviest or largest biblical unit of measurement for weight, equal to about 75 pounds or 35 kilograms. Now imagine the opulence of this enemy king's crown when it was placed on King David's head. David took the crown from their king's head and it was placed on his own head. It weighed a talent of gold and was set with precious stones. It's like they kind of skip over the fact that King David was wearing a 75-pound crown on his head. Talk about a neck day. Now, in order to be able to wear 75 pounds on your head, you would have had to be of a much larger stature with strength and a stronger bone and muscle structure back then. Again, that's because they that were born in the times of youth are of a larger stature than ye that are born in the times when the womb faileth. People were larger back then than they are now. And before anybody says, oh, well, that's talking about the giants, the Nephilim that were destroyed in the flood. The Nephilim were speaking of the sons of God, the Israelites before they were known as the Israelites. Everybody was larger back then. And if King David was able to wear a 75-pound crown on his head, well, would that make him a giant? You got to start using critical thinking and go precept upon precept, line upon line, as it says in Isaiah chapter 28 when you read the scriptures. But now I'm going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11, and I'm going to read it in the King James, and then I'm going to jump to the NLT, or New Living Translation. And remember what those guys said in that clip with I think it was the thumb bone. With a thumb bone this size, the person would have had to have been 12, 14, or 15 feet tall. This is Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11. For only Og, king of Bashan, and Og was an Amorite king. And the Amorites were, one of the tribes of the Canaanites. And the Canaanites were Hamites, or so-called Africans as they're known today. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. And that again, that's not talking about the sons of God or fallen angels going into the daughters of men and creating giants. He was just of a tribe of, tall people back then. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. Is it not in Rabbah of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits is it of length, and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. Now let's see, what the dimensions were of Og, the king of Bashan's bed. The NLT. King Og of Bashan was the last survivor of the giant Rephaites. His bed was made of iron and was more than 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. It can still be seen in the Ammonite city of Rabbah. So you'd have had to be a big boy to have an iron bed that was 13 feet long. So you were at least 12 and a half feet long to comfortably fit on that bed. This is 2 Samuel chapter 21, verse 20. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every toe 6, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he was also born to the giant. So that man was so massive that his bone structure, for stability, allowed for 6 fingers and 6 toes on each hand and each foot. Because again, the people back then were much larger than they are right now. And even today, we've got examples of people that are taller than the average person out here. They call it a medical, defect, gigantism or something like that. But simply, that's just a genetic leftover, so to speak, from when people were larger back then. And you see that people with a lot of that are taller than normal, like freakishly tall, they have health issues and usually don't live that long. That's because the world, the plants, the vegetation, the vegetables, the nutrients has waxed weaker through age. So those people aren't able to get the right amount of nutrients to be able to sustain that amount of height and bone structure and muscle mass. But now I'm gonna go to a website called Gistmania.com, and it's titled "The Dinka Tribe of South Sudan has the tallest set of people in the world, and Og was a Hamite, and these Dinka people of South Sudan are Hamites as well." And the people of Sudan are actually the original Egyptians, or Mizraim. And look at how tall they are. And this is just today. You could easily see somebody like that, laying on a bed that's 13 feet long, though somebody of this height, they look to be around, 6.5 to 7 feet tall, would be considered a teenager, a young boy, compared to somebody that would be 12, 13, 14, 15 feet tall. But now I'm going to go to the Wikipedia page for the Dinka people, and it says the Dinka people are a Nilotic ethnic group native to South Sudan. The Dinka mostly live along the Nile from Bor to Rink in the region of Bahr el Ghazal, Upper Nile, 2 out of 3 provinces that were formerly part of southern Sudan, and a Bayai area of the Nico Dinka in South Sudan. And when we go to Nilotic, this is what it says. The Nilotic peoples are people indigenous to the Nile Valley who speak the Nilotic languages. They inhabit South Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, the eastern border area of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania. Now let's go to the Nile Valley, where it says they dwell. And you see, you've got the Nile River there, which goes through Egypt, Sudan, which, as I just said, the Sudanese today or the original Egyptians or Mizraim. But when we, zoom in, what do you have at the top of Egypt? We're going into the, the so-called Middle East, really Western Asia, where, the Holy Land is, and the route which, the children of Israel took when they left Egypt, going over the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea to get into this land where the Canaanites dwelt. And the Canaanites were also, again, Hamites. And King Og of Bashan, was a Amorite or a Canaanite. And he was what? Laying on a bed that was 13 feet tall. So what? All these tall peoples dwelling around this part. And like the elder brother Malcolm of the Chicago camp always likes to go into, Mizraim always saw Canaan as one of their colonies because what? The Mizraimites and the Canaanites were both Hamites. So they were, relatives of each other. And again, the Dinka of South Sudan and Sudan are considered, the tallest people on the face of the earth. So when you line everything up, it makes sense, scripturally, historically, and scientifically, that people were much taller back then than they are now. And when the kingdom of heaven is established again and the earth goes back to its former youth, like the Garden of Eden, people, animals, fruits, vegetables, vegetation will gain its original height. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time.